A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 166th episode of Together for Education webinars brought to you by Notebook. Just over 2 years ago, when the pandemic had just set in and schools had closed down, we at Notebook felt it was our duty to set up a platform for educators to connect meaningfully on, discussing problems they were facing with the rising need of digital education and online learning, and arrive at common solutions. Today, 166 episodes later, this platform has grown much bigger than we had anticipated, thanks to your love and support. We have discussed extremely curricular topics here like digital learning and NEP and assessments, extracurricular topics like sports and theatre, topics like school finance, and even evolved topics like mental health. In a post-pandemic world, we are aware of the critical co-scholastic and extracurricular aspects that contribute so much to the schooling journey. Being inside the classroom is about so much more than just the transference of information. And our children have missed out on that for some time. They missed out on interacting with peers, the camaraderie of shared space, and some mischief too. As we have seen schools reopen across the country, we therefore wanted to discuss with the eminent panelists that we have today, what would our classrooms be like? What would be the culture you would want to promote? Today, we are joined by eminent educationists and for the first time, some students who would talk to us about what kind of culture they study in. Our first speaker for the topic today is Mr. Philip Burrett. Mr. Burrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. Mr. Burrett served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Activities, Dean of Student Welfare, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Burrett qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist, and we at Notebook are privileged to have Mr. Burrett as our senior advisor. So, thank you so much for sparing the time to be here today. Over to you. Mr. Burrett, sir?
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And very good evening to everyone at Notebook, our esteemed panelists, student friends, and those who've tuned in. I'm going to take this topic on in a general way and let the experts handle the existing culture in schools, because I don't teach in schools anymore, but I come to you with my experience of schools. So all communities and societies and families and tribes have a culture that they develop, and where each one of them actually has to live within and abide within these rules, which are actually meant to safeguard the group and make life comfortable and harmonious. It takes many, many years and generations to develop and assimilate a culture, which is usually based on a belief system, traditions, and handed down from elders to mentors. Now, the group gets its identity from its culture, and it's different from other tribes. Those who don't stick with the culture are ostracized. And, in a hunter-gatherer society, when you're ostracized, it's very difficult to live alone. Now, the same goes for classrooms and schools. While all schools have a unique culture, which everyone follows, each class teacher can design his or her own culture to be followed by his or her students. And I think if there's club culture and there's work culture, I'm sure there can be class culture. I would like to define culture as a mixture of values, behavior, and principles. Now, the old traditional schools, and I come from one of those schools, they've been around for many, many years, centuries. They've developed a culture which tends to stick. And while new changes take place, the culture is the bedrock on which these schools are based. And the alumni keep talking about this and living this old culture. Sometimes newer schools find this very obnoxious. But new schools which have all the the enviable technology and infrastructure, they sometimes lack a school culture. And they make the cardinal error of trying to incorporate some other school's culture, which you can't. You can't digest food that lies heavy on you. And Eton College cannot be a La Martiniere. and a Mayo College cannot be a Kendra Vidyalaya. Each has its own physical identity, its socio-economic, parental body, and what have you. Now, it was said that the Second World War was won on the playing fields of Eton, by which it is meant that the holistic education that these British public schools offered developed a character in the boy that saw the British society survive years of deprivation and bombing to emerge victorious. And I've seen schools where there are boards where entire families have gone to war, the First World War and Second World War. And so a culture that developed in schools carried on to a culture that's defended the country. Now, I've seen schools where students carry their uniforms very smartly, or schools where students wish visitors and are helpful and polite. Some schools have a culture of no cheating, lying, and stealing, while others produce students who score 98% marks on a regular basis. Now, there are schools that develop a culture of producing actors, musicians, sports people, par excellence. Now, in the school I worked in, adventure, service, egalitarianism, secularity, and democracy were part of our DNA. And that was the culture of the school. You can't come to the Doon school and say, I don't want to climb mountains, or you don't want to be democratic. There's a school in Nairobi called the Starahe School, which only has two rules. The first rule is do not do anything that will dishonor your family, your school, and yourself. And the second rule is do not forget the first rule. So really speaking, there's fewer rules there are to be remembered, the easier for a culture to be assimilated. Now, each school has its traditional pillars that seem to be ingrained in the students. And these traditional values are usually put on boards or painted somewhere. And there's so much subliminal learning that takes place as students walk past these boards that in 5 or 10 years of student's life, it's sort of ingrained indelibly in his soul. A classroom culture is developed by a teacher who lays down certain rules and ideas to follow, and which is students down the years pass on to the batches to follow. Older teachers don't even have to say a word. Their do's and don'ts are conveyed by the batches that have passed out. Building a classroom culture is a set of rules and boundaries that govern the expected behavior in a class, which actually aids teaching and learning and leads to an optimum interaction, respect, and the coverage of the syllabus. If it is best if some of the rules to be followed are actually made with the cooperation of students, because students respond much better to the boundaries that they themselves have been a part in making, rather than the despotic decision made by a teacher, this is my way or the highway. Children, as a rule, remember their strict teachers. They remember them fondly much later because these teachers created boundaries of expected behavior and clear consequences if these boundaries were breached. And as I said earlier, it takes years and a lot of experience to lay down a culture in a classroom. And it is best if a school's culture is in sync with the classroom culture. Now, in a very famous movie called Dead Poet Society, we saw a very talented teacher who loved his subject and his students, who created a culture of learning that seemed to clash with the outdated and stifling school culture. And in the end, the teacher had to go. And which leads me to the point that sometimes open-minded heads of schools have a responsibility of developing a school culture and also reviewing it from time to time before it becomes archaic and obsolete. And also to encourage idiosyncratic teachers in develop, while you have a school culture, they also have to develop the class culture. And every teacher might have its own culture. There's some very funny stories that I have to tell from my school. Before the school got renovated, there were these shelves, very big, deep shelves. And one of the teachers used to make the boys sit on the shelf if he forgot his book. So one afternoon when I walked down the class, I saw the teacher sitting in the shelf because he had breached the rule. He had forgotten his book. So he was sitting in the shelf and teaching. There are some teachers who have a culture of their students must do some pre-reading before all topics are taught. One teacher developed a culture where he used to walk out of a class during an exam, a class exam, because he believed that the students would not use unfair means, and it worked with him. It worked. He could do it; others couldn't. Some classes have a culture of where students help the weaker students, and it's a done thing. Towards the end of my teaching career, I developed a culture of where I taught in a circle. A lot of my teaching of value education was done in a circle. And students knew that when I was getting to class, they would quickly arrange the chairs and tables in a circle. And I think students like rules that are consistent, fair, and lead to good learning. I know that with the online classes that were in practice with the pandemic, some teachers were more able to handle their online classes because they had quickly developed a culture of online learning. While some teachers had a lot of trouble managing very chaotic kids. One of the greatest problems schools will face as they open up after the pandemic is to reestablish a clear school culture that might have somewhat been forgotten over the months that the schools have been locked down, especially residential schools, where entire batches have passed out without having imbibed some of the rules and values of the school. And some of the new batches who have enrolled in schools but have sat at home these 2 years have had no seniors actually hand down the traditions that make the school culture. Things like opening doors to lady teachers, serving the head of table before they sit down to eat, trooping into assembly with silence, lining up, form-wise. Each school, each activity, each school has its own lingo and lexicon. And these are the things that are handed down only by students. Things like do not sneak is a culture of a school. Some people may disagree with it, but it's still a value. There is much more to learn apart from subject knowledge when a student comes to school. And they learn a lot from teachers who have developed their own cultures. Now, my housemaster in school was a maths teacher, but he had the culture, he inculcated the value of working consistently. He handed in corrections within 24 hours of it being submitted. He always corrected our grammar. As I said, even though being a maths teacher, the use of can and may was drilled in us. The fact that equipments and advices had no plural. You can't use advices and equipments. He taught us how to pronounce epitome and asthma, and how to spell diarrhea and camouflage and opportunity. So I learned a lot of English from my maths teacher. There also, he also was very insistent that in an equation, all equal signs were put under each other. Very, very particular and fussy upon this. And his geometrical constructions that we made, the ABCD of a rectangle, had a certain way of being done. And his eye for detail and his quest for excellence, I think, lived on in his students long after he passed away. Often outsiders judge a school not by its infrastructure and the results, but by the culture that is displayed by the students while outside schools. I think developing a class culture must include the cooperation of parents who will support and back the teachers. The teacher's tolerant limit of bad behavior will determine the class boundaries. And some classes are so noisy and continue to be that way because the teacher accepts it. Consistency is very important. You can't insist on a certain behavior one day when you might be in a bad mood, and the next day you laugh it off. The children then have no they have no sort of base on which to develop reasonably consistent behavior. I think classroom culture involves creating an environment where students feel safe and free to be involved, and a space where everyone should feel accepted, included, respected, without fear that their feelings may be hurt. Teachers should be willing to listen and do anything that will aid learning. I will close by saying that good classroom culture ensures that every voice is heard, everyone is equal and respected, that there is clear communication between parent, teacher, child, that there is an integration of social and emotional learning with the subjects, and finally, it facilitates collaborative learning. And with that, Shibayu, I hope I have laid some foundation on which our experts will continue. And Achin, if he's there, thank you very much for listening. I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for that wonderful, wonderful introduction to this topic. Over these last couple of years, we have been in absolute awe of the kind of culture you have always propagated within your classroom. And all the examples that you've shared with us, where you've had a wonderful interaction with your students, which was based on mutual respect. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Achin Bhattacharya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. Achin is a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales, a fellow of the ICAI, and a member of CPA Australia and CPA Ireland. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award. An avid reader and a passionate traveler, Achin has keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce, and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Shubha, am I audible?
Yeah, Achin, loud and clear.
I once again welcome all of you to today's session. The most esteemed principals, senior educators in this forum will agree with me that school leaders, principals, they have an instinctive awareness that organizational culture is a key element of school success. Now, they might say at times during a conversation that their school has a good culture when teachers are expressing a shared vision and students are succeeding. Or that, on the other hand, for example, they may, in terms of pointing out developmental needs, at times they may opine that they need to work on the school culture. Say, for instance, attrition of quality teachers, school losing staff, or students' disciplinary issues on the rise. But like many organizational leaders, visionaries, each principal, each school leader may have their own individual opinion on the elements that create a positive culture. Now, it's tricky to define. And again, parsing its components can be challenging, practically very, very challenging. Especially amid the push for on the one hand, there's a pressure for tangible outcomes like higher and better scores. So it can be tempting to think that school culture is just too vague or soft to prioritize. However, researchers who have studied culture have tracked and demonstrated, and here we are not discussing about schools, we're discussing about any organization for that matter. It has been proved, it has been demonstrated that there's a very strong and significant correlation between organization culture and organization's performance. Now, once we understand what constitutes culture and learn to see it not as a hazy mass of intangibles, but as something that can be actually pinpointed and designed, we would surely start to execute a more cultural vision. Now, a culture will be strong or weak depending on the interaction between people in the organization. For instance, in a strong culture, there are many overlapping and cohesive interactions, so that knowledge about the organization's distinctive character and what it takes to thrive it is widely spread. Best practices are actually shared. At a recent session, I was going through this yesterday evening, in fact, that at a recent session of the National Institute for Urban School Leaders at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And this was exactly the topic. Speakers took a deep dive into culture, describing the building blocks of an organization's character and fundamentally how it feels to work there. Now, we would all agree that our children are much more than some of their school grades. Behind every exam result lies a whole person with incalculable, untapped potential, and myriad facets and capacities just waiting to be discovered. What a child shows she knows in school is not an accurate measure of lifelong learning ability or her human potential. And we have discussed this time and again in this forum. That it's not that how, but considering this, today, if you look at the whole structure, proficiencies in the 3 R's of reading, remembering, and regurgitating, factual knowledge may at times help a student to get a great grade, maybe A+. But to thrive in adulthood, they need deep down things that are not so easily measured, be it tacit knowledge, gained through our senses, observation, and social interaction. But the good news is, and this is where I think culture plays a very important role, the good news is we have all we need from an early age, and we need to actually redesign our school culture so that our children can pursue their natural inclinations, and in doing so find their self-worth. And this exactly is the finding of this particular session that I referred to. After looking at surveys, numbers, global data, that there's nothing in adulthood that an adventurous, well-equipped, carefully nurtured childhood cannot prepare someone for. And again, there are various ways of looking at it. For instance, culture, on one way of looking at it is culture is connections. A culture will be strong or weak depending on interaction between the people in the organization that we were just discussing. Now, for example, if there is continuous interaction, as we discussed, and best practices being shared. On the other hand, if you look at a place where interaction is very sporadic, scarce, people are trying to hold on to good things, not sharing them. Now, beliefs, values, and action will spread the farthest and be tightly reinforced when everyone is communicating with everyone else. Now, in a strong school culture, leaders, principals, directors, they communicate directly with teachers, administrators, counselors, parents. And it's also important that each member of the ecosystem communicate directly with each other. But a culture is bound to be weaker when communications are limited and there are fewer connections. Say, for example, in a particular school, if teachers very rarely or almost never hear directly from their principal, or a group of staff members are operating in isolation from others, there are various groups who are operating in a very isolated manner, and rarely trying to collaborate. Now, it will be difficult for messages to be shared and shared beliefs and commitments to be spread. The other way of looking at culture is, it's also about core beliefs and behavior. Now, within that strong or weak structure, what exactly people believe and how they act depends on the messages. Now, both direct and indirect. Messages that leaders in the organization send. We have all heard this adage that culture always flows from the top. So what's the message that is being communicated? A good culture arises from messages that promote traits like collaboration, honesty, and hard work. Now, again, culture is shaped by 5 interwoven elements. Now, I've just tried to look at broad categories. Of course, these 5 can be broken down to 50 or even more. But each of which have the power to influence. First and foremost, fundamental beliefs and assumptions of the things that people at the school consider to be true. So there are certain beliefs that every member share. For example, all students have potential to succeed, to do great. For example, making this place successful, how successful this place will be, it depends on teamwork. We all need to share, we all need to collaborate. So these are fundamental beliefs and assumptions. Second, shared values or the judgments people at your organization make about those beliefs and assumptions. Now, whether they're right or wrong, good or bad, just or unjust, that's a different thing. But shared values or judgments. Third, norms or how members believe that they should act or behave, or what is expected of them. For example, if it's a norm that each team member, each teacher, each educator need to be present in weekly level meetings, grade meetings. And it's not something being enforced. It's something that everyone believes in, that yes, this is important. We need to do it. Fourth, of course, is patterns and behavior, or the way people actually act and behave in any organization. And fifth, tangible evidence, or the physical, visual, auditory, or other sensory signs that demonstrate the behavior of people in the school. Now, each of these components influence and drive one another. These are not watertight compartments. Of course, there's a lot of intermingling, forming a circle of reinforcing beliefs and actions. The other aspect is that we will all agree that, if you look at things from a student's perspective, we will all agree and what a student expects. Undoubtedly, a teacher or an educator is the most important aspect of the school. It's not about the infrastructure and buildings alone. It's about the person who is actually teaching me. And we all agree that teaching is so much more than just merely creating lesson plans and delivering them to students. Teaching environment is equally important as what is being taught. Now, students will be able to perform to their potential and thrive in a space where they feel comfortable. Now, if they're too focused only on the lesson plan, you may be missing a vital piece of the puzzle. I think it's equally important to make them comfortable. A positive classroom culture. And it's beneficial both ways for educators as well. Now, it involves creating an environment where students feel safe, comfortable, accepted, and also students should be perfectly at ease in terms of asking questions. They should not fear being judged, irrespective of howsoever silly the question is. If a student doesn't understand, and maybe more than once, he or she should be perfectly be at ease, made to feel comfortable in terms of asking a question. I think that goes a very long way in terms of creating that sense of belonging, in terms of the student actually feeling comfortable. And only when we are comfortable, we all agree that only when we are comfortable, we are able to give our best. The other aspect is, I think, everyone contributes to the culture. So if there's a change in the culture, whether for making things better or worse, each stakeholder has a role in it. Because the classroom culture is a collective habit and behavior of teachers and students in the classroom. And we need to understand that each participant may come from a different background, different layers of the socio-economic pyramid, as Burrett also referred to. And it's really important. It's really important that each one takes responsibility to ensure that the school culture is good enough. It's very unfair. It's very unfair to hold only teachers accountable. I think parents are equally responsible in order to ensure, because a student, the kind of time he's spending at home and what he or she is learning has a great bearing on the classroom culture as well, because that's what he or she carries to school. Again, there are other aspects, like, for example, synergy effect, because at times collective result is more than individual aggregation. The bagpiper syndrome, because students very often follow the culture of their role model in their peer group. And that happens very often. So why this is important? We would all agree, because environment counts a lot in terms of be it motivation, concentration, attitude, memory. And a student should actually look forward to coming to school each day in an atmosphere that is safe, where he or she feels comfortable, a place where he or she is being nurtured. There's a lot of fun element in it. And this is where classroom culture plays such an important role. Now, and only when they're made to feel comfortable, they'll be more willing to engage with their educators, engage with the topic, and even engage with their peers. So the other aspect is that how can we build a class culture? We have been discussing that it's important, but that's a no-brainer. We would all agree that it's important. We are just putting a name to it. It's the age-old concept. But how do we actually do it? How do we promote, considering the fact that there is pressure for academic achievement, there is pressure for overall growth, aspects like social and emotional literacy are so important. So how do we actually build it? Of course, we are a very senior panel here today, and I'm sure they'll share their own perspective on it. Few small points that I just want to touch upon. First and foremost, I think maybe it's really important to seek individual, have individual one-on-one sessions with students. Maybe especially at the beginning of an academic session, maybe a small survey, sample survey kind of thing. At times, colors, I was going through yesterday that particular session that I referred to, and so much emphasis has been laid on color, warm colors, that at times make students feel cheerful and alert. Cool colors that promote calm and reflection. We all know that black and white may be at times the most practical, cost-effective option, but we would all agree that little color can do wonders with regard to student engagement. Third, making learning meaningful. How do we ensure the students are actually able to connect to it in terms of the real world, so that they actually give it far more importance? Experiential learning, for instance, learning through experiences. At times, starting sessions with a question. I've seen teachers, and I myself remember one of my teachers, and forever indebted to her, always started her class with a quote for the day. And she used to be a class teacher, normally first period. And I still remember that used to set the tone, the pace for the day. It was so important for us at that particular point of time. Learning together. Other aspect very important in today's age, and I was reading about this. There are times this whole culture of collaborating learning, teacher acting as a moderator, teacher facilitating peer-to-peer discussions is so important. And of course, individual interactions. Making students being made to feel responsible by giving them particular roles, jobs, so that they feel important. It develops their self-esteem. So small things, be it handing out papers for class tests, be it watering the classroom plants, and continuously rotating it so that everyone gets a chance. So I think these are a few things that I wanted to share. I thank all of you for giving me a very patient hearing. We are a very senior panel here today, very wonderful panel of educators. And considering the fact that this topic is so important, maybe soft, but all-encompassing. I really look forward to the deliberation on this very important topic in terms of their own experience and how actually they promote this class culture. I thank all of you again. Over to you, Shubhash.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Achin mentioned, We do have a wonderful panel lined up for you. But before that, a little bit about us here at Notebook. We at Notebook are an edtech organization. We create short videos pertaining to the school curriculum. Now, these videos find two particular uses. One is when you as a teacher are starting a new chapter. You would find a notebook video that is about 6 to 10 minutes in duration that would give your students a visual introduction to the topic, and you could possibly start your class by playing that short video. The second use case is where a child is studying at home and needs to revise the topic. They have access to these same videos on their personal devices, be it a laptop or a smartphone, and they can watch the videos over and over again until they get a very good grasp of what you are teaching. What I will do now is play a short snippet of one of the notebook videos for you so that you know what they look like. That, ladies and gentlemen, was a short snippet of one of the notebook videos. If you go over to our website, www.notebook.school, or use our mobile apps for Android or iOS, you would find more than 10,000 such videos at your disposal. Well, with that done, it is now time to start the discussion on our topic today, defining class culture. We've had a fantastic introduction from Burrett sir and Achin, but before we go on to the panelists that we have today, we wanted to listen to those people that this topic addresses and affects the most, our students. So here are some students who we asked what they thought about classroom culture, whether they thought it was important at all or not. And this is what they had to say.
Hello, I'm Aradhna, ex-student of Andhra Educational Society. Today, Notebook has provided us with an opportunity to present our views on the topic classroom culture in front of the dignitaries. And with that, I think it would be a great idea to talk to different students from various educational organizations to present their views on the same. It would be nice to know a student's perspective.
Teachers helped me in learning the true value of teamwork. They always create a supporting and encouraging environment. One of my teachers is very strict on discipline, but that makes a class more understanding and interesting as all the students take part willingly.
In my school, teachers are very helpful. Teachers interact with us and praise us with a positive remark and explain our mistake very patiently. They create a disciplined environment which also encourages to study and take interest.
Bullying is common among students, but the teacher in my school prevent the same from happening by creating a safe psychological environment where students understand each other and themselves better. Thank you.
Some of the teachers are very comprehensive and easy talking, and they come up with really quick and good solutions. So I have experienced both the emotions in my college life.
A good classroom culture for me means that everyone should be given an equal opportunity to grow, and not only the academically sound ones. Everyone should be free to express their views in a way which is appreciated by others. While growing up, I have noticed one thing, that some students which are not academically that good are not able to ask questions in the class because they are considered silly by others. So a system should be made where everyone should feel comfortable in their learning, which will help them to increase their confidence and shape them into a better human being.
In my personal opinion, I think teachers should be more considerate of the students' feelings, and instead of demotivating the students, they can use positive reinforcements and praises, which will help the student get motivated and work towards the goal.
So teachers at my school was very considerate about our behavior. They look forward and they go to their personal level to solve our problems. They also help us to solve our emotional turmoil which we all were going through. And they also look forward and overcome our problems, our personal problems as well. This develops trust and a better teacher-student relationship. Thank you.
After hearing the different points and perspectives of students, we got to know how the student-teacher relationship affects the life of a student in the personal, professional, and educational background. Classroom culture plays an important role in the upbringing of a student.
And it is now my privilege to introduce the wonderful, wonderful panel that we have lined up for you today. We have with us today Mr. Ranjeet Kumar, who is the principal of St. Michael's School in Ranchi, Jharkhand. He's held that post since August 2021. Prior to taking over as the principal at St. Michael's, he has served as the principal at Sardar Patel Vidyalaya GP Group at Greater Noida and been the vice principal of St. Michael's Ranchi. He was also a PGT at Delhi Public School, Bokaro, a teacher at Indian School of Learning, ISM Annex, Dhanbad, and at MMBBRS in Dhanbad. He holds a BSc Honours in Zoology, a postgraduate diploma in computer applications, an MSc in computer science, an MPhil in computer science, a B.Ed, and an MA in education. He's won a number of awards throughout his illustrious career. To name a few, the Best Principal Award 2020 by Institute of Scholars, Bangalore, Outstanding School Leader Award in Indian Legend Awards 2019, Delhi, Keynote Speaker Award in EduTalk School Innovation Summit 2019, Delhi, Letter of Appreciation for Integration of Art in Education Training Program by Anjana Welfare Society in UP, Letter of Appreciation by Science Olympiad Foundation, Conference on Excellence in School Education by IIT Delhi, Certificate of Completion of Workshop of Leading in Chaos by ICSL, Java Programming by Oracle Academy US, PLSQL Programming by Oracle Academy US, Database Design and SQL Programming by Oracle Academy in the US. Sir, thank you so much for sparing your time to be here today. It's our privilege to have you. We also have with us Ms. Rashmi Singh, who is the principal at the Poddar Brio International School in Badlapur. She started her career as A-level and IGCSE faculty in RIMS International School and Junior College in Juhu. She has headed the physics department of Poddar International School located in Santa Cruz and was shortlisted for a teacher exchange program in the US. Her students have secured world topper ranks in subjects of physics under her guidance for A-levels. She was a trainer in international curriculum, and she is the principal and CEO at the Poddar Brio International School located at Badlapur East. She has a master's degree in physics alongside a B.Ed. Ma'am, thank you so much for being here today. We look forward to hearing your views. We also have with us Ms. Neelam Sharma, who is the principal of the VVN Edify School, Kanakpura Main Road, Bangalore. She herself holds a BSc Non-Medical, a B.Ed, a PGD EMA, and eConnect computer courses from the HP University, the Himachal Pradesh University in Shimla and Zap Infotech, Chandigarh. She herself belongs to Himachal Pradesh and is married and settled there. She has more than 20 years of experience in teaching mathematics and in school administration. Ma'am, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for sparing your time for this discussion. We have with us today Dr. Subhash B. Nair, who is the Director of Academics at the Shantiniketan Indian School in Doha, Qatar. Sir holds a Master's of Education from University of Kerala, a Master of Science in Life Science Education from Regional Institute of Education NCRT, and a Doctorate in Education Technology from University of Kerala. He is a qualified UGC Master's Level National Education Test NET in Education and in Life Science. He received the National Award to Teachers from the Honorable President of India on 5th September 2016 in recognition of contributions in the field of school education. He has a rich and varied experience in CBSE schools in India, UAE, Bahrain, Oman, and Qatar, engaging, influencing, and transforming schools into institutions of reputation by leading professional teachers in the path of innovation and change. He developed the trademarked SIS Learn active learning pedagogy based on inclusion, equity, and personalized instruction with the tagline, "Everyone can learn and achieve high performance." He founded the Transform Ed for professional development of delightful teachers. Sir, thank you so much for making time to be here today. We look forward to hearing and learning from your wealth of experience. Well, at this point, I shall switch on my video and stop my screen share. And a very good evening to all of you once again. Thank you so much for sparing the time to be here today. Mr. Ranjit Kumar and Neelam ma'am, if you could please switch on your cameras.
Yes, thank you, sir. We are
Ranjit
also...
sir, a very good evening. I'll come to you with the first question, and which is a fairly obvious one. We'll go around the table with this one. Sir, what is the kind of culture that you promote in the classrooms of your school?
Sir, our school is very rich in culture, and one of the culture that school is having is every student of the school is having a mantra that our gratitude is the attitude. We are in a school is always about showing our gratitude to the others, and we in the school emphasize on the magic words. Like even teachers of our school are not supposed to tell the students walk in line. They are supposed to tell the students please walk in line. So the emphasis on the words, these magic words like please, thank you, are so imbibed in our system. We are having a culture which is different than the meditation, but and might be different in our school, that just before the break, we have 1 minute before the completion of the break, we have a concept of freeze bell. Well, every student just freeze wherever they are. Concept is that because there is a lot of chaos during the break, with that 1 minute of freeze, we are able to make their concentration back toward the studies that will be starting after the break into the classroom. We are having a rich culture of sharing and caring that we keep teaching our students. But at the same time, I must tell you that these have been our culture. Now we are facing a Herculean task to bring it back to the old level, because the last 2 years of pandemic have destroyed this culture. I feel 90%. We don't have those seniors to tell them that what kind of cultures we are having. Or many have forgotten actually the kind of students that we are getting since 1st April when the school started normally in our region. Is most of the students are impatient. Their aggression level have increased a lot. They have complete lack of patience and lack of belongingness. They are not able, it seems like that one child is not able to tolerate the other child presence. That kind of disturbance that this online education has done, it must be having its own benefit, and it was definitely the requirement of that time. But as far as the school culture is concerned, I really believe it has destroyed the culture a lot, and it is really a Herculean task. We are constantly talking now. Problem has been there, but definitely as a school leader, we cannot talk about the problem. We have to find what is the solution of it. And we at present we are doing constant counseling. We are constantly, every day, a period has been allotted in the classroom where someone is talking about the school culture. Someone is talking about the benefit of that belongingness. Someone is talking about the benefit of why we are having this teamwork and collaboration, why we require each other. In the pandemic, it had been completely individualistic teaching. where individual is teaching another individual. There is no collaboration, no teamwork. I think frequent talking to the students, frequent motivation to the if we keep motivating the students, I think it will take some time of 6 months or 1 year. But I'm confident that we'll bring back the rich culture that is school we're having. But in candid admission, I will tell you that whatever culture I am talking about, it was 2 years back. At present, we are trying to build this culture again in our school.
Thank you so much, sir. And we really appreciate your candor in sharing this with us. In fact, we wanted to explore how the pandemic has affected this whole concept of culture in the classroom. Rashmi ma'am, if I may come to you next. The same question, what is the kind of culture, what are the mantras that your school follows?
Well, good evening to all panelists. Good evening to you, sir. And I would thank you for giving me this opportunity. I would begin with the words that I picked up during the session when the children were speaking, and also my dear colleagues. One of the students said there should be equal opportunity provided to all students, and all children should be treated equally and not just the ones who are sound in academics. Apart from that, he also said the ones who are not so sound in academics are considered silly, which is something I would, I would throw a light upon. There's a famous statement by Mr. Einstein, Albert Einstein. He says that if you tend to feel that if you ask a question and you will be termed as a fool, so it's better to be a fool for a minute, 1 minute, half an hour, 15 minutes, or the period of, the duration of your class, rather than to be a fool for the entire lifetime. So I feel this culture, this kind of environment should be prevailed in a classroom setup where all children, whatever silly questions they throw at the teacher should be patient enough to take up those questions. Moreover, as I start, I always feel with respect to the culture in the classroom, we Indians stand slightly different compared to our counterparts in the neighboring countries. We have the statement of Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara. So this is basically a statement which shows what kind of culture should be prevailing in a school or in any educational setup. The respect not only for teachers, but the respect for all around in the school setup should be prevailing while the child is in the education setup. Moreover, I feel that these children, when they are very young, toddlers in the infant age, they have, it is said by the researchers that they have the brain wires which are absolutely not connected. It is an unconnected wires that they have. Slowly and gradually, when they come up with the different life experiences, with the interactions, and with their quest to get their answers from whoever is around, the wire starts joining, and that's how the wire then becomes complex and of course connected, and that's how they slowly get to maturity. They understand things, and when they move on to the primary age, now that they have learned things, they have their experiences. They have to be taught to apply those experiences for the positive aspects, to get the positive aspects imbibed into their lifestyles, not only through the at home, the home environment, but also in the school as well. Well, if you ask me, I come from an international background. I have taken up the international curriculum, and I believe, I'm just sharing you, I don't know if it is the right platform, the day when we had our results for A levels and IGCSE, believe me, sir, it used to be the day when I felt, we all teachers, we felt it is our result day. It is not the result of children. So we were, we were analyzing, okay, what could be the scores of these children? What could have been their performance? So here I would just like to conclude that the failure of a student is not the failure of the student, actually it's the failure of ourselves as teachers. So this culture should be imbibed in the classroom where children should be given the confidence that we are with you. Don't consider yourself as silly. We are with you. We are ready to take up all such silly aspects, whatever it is, and we will take it up to make sure that you become confident students and confident individuals. Moreover, I would also like to speak upon the magic word said by Sir, Of course, it's very, very positive reinforcement into classroom setups. There should be mutual agreement between the teacher and the student. I believe every teacher has his or her own way of molding the class as per their mutual agreement. So it's different from teacher to teacher, student to student. But end result should be the student and the teacher should be bound, should listen to each other, should, of course, critically analyze over each other, and should be, ready to accept the decisions coming from the others without any kind of, prejudices. Moreover, I also feel that the most important aspect of our culture as culture which we are prevailing into Indian territory, one of the culture is whatever we do when we start our life as students, it should be aiming towards the welfare of the society. Now this at large, if we think any career we pursue or any behavior we display or anything that we do right from grassroots and slowly when we gradually move on, it should have a positive impact on the society without harming anybody's sentiments or anybody's, in the course of your education. So the objective should be to serve the society. That should be the culture which should be given to children, which should be with the help of different life examples. Now tell me, Mr. Bhagat Singh, he was a freedom fighter. He had all resources of life. Why didn't he think of, getting a good life and serving a good government job and living a peaceful life? Why didn't he think of it? Because that culture to protect his motherland, to protect his people was there in him. All right. So I don't know which school he must have learned all this, but this was a culture which was there in our Indian territory. So this was one of it. The second of it, I would say, is however powerful position we reach up to, we should ensure that no destitute or no weaker section of a society is given any kind of, or it experience any kind of repercussions due to the power of people. So they should not be harmed. These are the statements from our Bhagavad Gita. So with that, I would definitely conclude with my few last statements. I would say that as per Mr. Bhattacharya, he also said that there should be sharing of experiences. Yes, there should be sharing of experiences right from the student to teacher to parent, and it should be an imbibed. It should be imbibed in the whole setup. It's a triangle. And moreover, I feel that, when it comes to keeping the knowledge to oneself, we should know that today, whatever little we have, it's because of the sharing. Whatever little we could follow and we could give it to our coming generation is what we've been getting from our seniors, from our ancestors. So let us imbibe this kind of thought process in our young learning children, that sharing of good practices, of best practices only multiplies it. It will never deduct that. So with that, I come to my conclusion. Thank you again for giving.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think we're putting together a nice list. First, we had gratitude. Now we have added service, empathy, and social empowerment to that list. And let's see where we grow. Neelam, ma'am, if I may come to you next.
Happy evening. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Well, we promote a culture of learning, reflecting, and supporting each other. A culture of learning is a collection of thinking habits, belief about self, and collaborative workflows that result in sustained critical learning. I think almost everything or anything can be learned or unlearned. And how we promote this culture in the classroom is either strategically or just let it happen. Usually we follow a few steps. Let's talk about strategically. Then we follow, 3 steps: show them, help them, and then let them. Demonstrate the think aloud, reflective writing, metacognitive conversations, and other human practices and habits that lead to learning, and then reflect again on their impact. How were they successful? Where did they fall short? What might you do next time? So all this in the first step. Now come to the next step. It is to help students do on their own what we just showed them how to do. put them in groups, have them publish their thinking in a podcast, give them soft cushions, to land on when they fail. And other strategies are coaching and journal support, to help them publish their thinking, the right bit at the right time and for the right audience. Help them self-assess their performances. Also help them to create their own standards for their work. Help them revisit old ideas and old writings and old project, etc. And now come to the final stage, that is promoting a culture of learning in the classroom is to simply get out of the way. Give them only just enough for them to take off on their own. It could be a topic, a community, a project idea, an app, or a problem worth solving. Then let them show what they can do. If they just sit there like mumps on a log, we go back to step one. That is again, show them, help them, and finally let them. Apart from this, there are knowledge sharing sessions to create a learning culture. Informal learning and social learning are a big part of learning. We encourage and reward our staff to, for sharing knowledge. They will be more engaged in learning, thus in turn helps building a strong learning culture. And last but not the least, we as an organizational leaders at all levels are often in an influential position. If we are engaged and dedicated to our own learning, it reinforces a learning culture. We do this by setting our own learning goals, talking about trainings we have taken, being willing and open to corrections and feedback, and again reflecting on mistakes made, to promote learning culture. I hope I have shared a bit of culture in a classroom. I think it will take hours if we continue this. So I'll just conclude with this.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think if I had to kind of find a keyword in all that you said, I think it's empowerment. You really put a lot of the onus on the student, and it's them correcting themselves, fixing their own path, learning themselves. And I think it's a beautiful way to, make them very self-reliant that way. Dr. Nair, if I may come to you next. Sir, we purposefully kept you for the last person on this particular question because, sir, with you, culture has two different dimensions, right? If you're sitting in Doha, you have a culture in the classroom which has multiple world cultures blending into it. So how does it work?
That's right. Good evening, all of you.
Good evening.
Thank you for this opportunity to share and listen to different views on school culture. Unfortunately, I belong to a different school of thought about school culture. I believe, and also my team believes, that a school culture has to evolve. It cannot be a static culture that we can thrust upon students. In this part of the world, we are actually in competition with the rest of the world. The world which is increasingly complex and highly relational. And that is where we live in. And we think that we are preparing students for their life. But are we really doing it? So what we do is creating a nurturing culture of education, a nurturing culture where we let the culture to evolve. We let students to decide the key elements of the school culture. So the students decided, students-led, students-created culture is what we are trying to create. I'm not very sure how successful we are in this process, because even now, the affiliation and examination bodies believe that the education system should be preparing children for exams. Of course, within that framework of the requirement of students preparing for their exams, we also help them to improve their learning skills. So we have a culture of active learning. We also have tried and keep trying to have a culture of affection, acceptance, and attention. So the emotional elements, we believe, are the most important elements at school. The cognitive development, of course, they can have from any platform. Even your platform will help them to learn well. However, actively learning in a social setting is what we want to give them. So that culture of socializing and learning in a society, in a social setup, is what we are trying to do. And in that process, we give importance to professional development of both students and teachers. We try to improve the professionalism. Continuous professional development of teachers make a lot of difference in promoting a very congenial, acceptable culture. And unfortunately, the culture that we define may not be the culture that our children are really interested in. So there are conflicts, there are complexities. So we need to see that these complexities and conflicts only will help them to increase their resilience and perseverance. So which are very, very essential for them to be successful in this world in their life. I hope I answered.
Wonderful, sir. I mean, we could not have capped this out better, right? We had various elements and then fluidity, be change ready. I think that was beautiful. But sir, I'll come back to my previous question and say, this is what you're doing in school. They all come from various different kind of families, mostly expats given the kind of population that you have in Qatar. Some would be Indian, some would come from the West, some from Latin America. So that amalgamation, because culture is also a function of what they're learning at home. How do you balance that part?
Yeah, we always consider this cross-cultural environment. We consider it as promoting the global citizenship of our children. Our children become more wider in their thoughts, and also they accept other cultures, and certain elements of other cultures will become part of their own culture. So the school has got a multicultural environment, and this is helping our students to learn, to adjust and adapt better in new situations. So it's really advantageous. Sometimes it becomes difficult for certain students in the beginning, but they soon get along with this cross-cultural environment, and it's advantageous and beneficial for them to learn better and to gain more confidence and also the skills and competencies, because that's what the world needs from them, the adaptability and adjustability in new situations.
Thank you, sir. Rashmi ma'am and Neelam ma'am, I'll just continue from where we were talking with sir and ask you both this. You have parents at home who are teaching their children to be a certain way. Now, the unfortunate reality is we live in a densely populated country, which means our perception of competition is perhaps bigger than the competition itself. And parents are pushing their kids really, really hard. That flies right in the face of having a culture that's supposed to be inclusive, full of mutual respect. How do you balance the two? Any of you can go first. We would love this to be a discussion between the two of you.
Yeah, competition is not bad. This world is full of competition. So we need to prepare children to be very competitive. And the culture of high performance is what we need to create or help children to create at schools. A culture of high performance, culture of active learning and high performance. We can't blame parents for high expectations about their child's performance. It's possible, and as you read out my profile, we have created an active learning pedagogy. We named it SIS Learn, and there we believe that equity, inclusion, and personalization of instruction can actually help building this concept of anybody and everybody can learn. Everybody can learn and achieve high performance. So a culture of active learning and high performance is very essential. We cannot allow children to be lazy all the time. We need to educate them that increase self-awareness and understanding about themselves is the beginning, and the hard work is the process required for them to generate some results. So definitely competition, healthy competition with equal opportunities to all is very essential in school environment and culture.
Thank you, sir. I'll just get across to Rashmi, ma'am. Ma'am, you were saying something.
Yeah, sir. I would just say that there are a few points I was noting down while sir was speaking. See, there are three factors as given by the clinical psychologist. One of the factor is there should be a healthy environment for better learners. Healthy environment, health not in terms of bodily health, the mental health as well. Secondly, there should be good sources of learning experience. But the third factor, sir, is unfortunately your heredity. This is the restraint. So if it is rightly said by again Mr. Einstein, that if a fish is judged by his ability, her ability to climb a tree, then the fish will consider itself a fool for its entire lifetime. So I strongly feel that let the child himself realize his or her potential and learning abilities. And that, of course, we as teachers, we need to also make sure that we also have our rubrics to ensure that the child falls, what particular intelligence this child falls into. We want biologists, we want physicists, we want chemists, we want everybody. We cannot make everybody engineers and scientists. We want all the stratas of society to be equally functioning. So here I would just speak that with respect to the self-awareness, which sir just said. Now there is one very interesting finding. It says that like when a child attempts his or her examination, nothing can disturb the student while he or she is writing their answers. They are so focused. They try to get all the data on the answer sheet, right? So here the concept of consciousness. When a child is conscious, the child tries to focuses more on his or her ability. Whatever ability they have, they will be in a position to hone it in a better way. So here the aspect of making students conscious about all the acts that they do, good, bad, whatever acts they do, they have to be conscious of it. So then this concept of hard working will slowly fly off. The concept of learning with fun will automatically be the way in which. And the last thing which I would like to say, as you were saying, parents have their own way of teaching students. Now let me tell you that children, it is observed in a finding, children who are rude, who are very harsh, or who are very I can say the ones who express themselves straightforward without assuming that it would have a repercussion on somebody's sentiment, they are the ones who are treated in a most bad manner back at home. So this kind of, now let me also add here that we all are parents. Maybe some of these parents in our school are very aged and they think they are the most experienced ones, but that is not the case. Parenting is something which is evolving, and there is no school for parenting as of yet. So let us understand that the parent also needs a separate counseling, a separate understanding to be made, that why the results in your children is like that, because there is some input back at home as well, and there are certain corrections needed. So with this I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Neelam, if I may come to you, I think we've set the stage for your school perfectly, because you believe in empowering the students, right? And you know that there would be a certain set of parents who would say, "Aap kyun kuch nahi kar rahe?" Right? So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that particular stakeholder of the ecosystem, the parents, in creating this culture?
Okay.
Is that question to me again?
I'm asking Neelam ma'am, but you are free to,
Okay.
I mean.
Okay.
Rashmi ma'am,
I'll let
you would
ma'am
like
take
to
it.
say?
Actually, I was disconnected for a while. I couldn't hear the completely. Ma'am, you can take on. No problem. I'll add on in between.
It's okay, Rashmi ma'am. You
Neelam
can
ma'am, you
continue.
can take on.
Fine. Well, that culture of learning, participating,
Yes,
and
yeah, ma'am. I'm sorry. Please carry on.
sure, ma'am. Thank you. I have already discussed that culture of learning, participating, and supporting. It is not just built at school, but also at home. To engage students, we must reach out to them in ways that are culturally and linguistically responsive and appropriate. When either at home or at school, students get punished for their insensible behavior or conduct, then both parents and teachers often fail to reinforce good behavior in early childhood, and that ends up making a student insensitive. Instead of punishing the student for their mistakes, teachers and parents must understand that the student, or rather I would like to say child, might not be able to decipher the good intentions behind the punishment. That could lead to change of perceptions of punishments, and also the life lessons they were trying to achieve for which they got punished. Instead, if we try to make it more relatable for them by engaging them with the analogous stories and their outcomes, different activities and their outcomes, we might be able to get to them in better ways. If we do this, we will see tremendous personal growth and confidence in their behavior, and they will be able to relish many activities and be comfortable with learning new things instead of complaining about only staying in their comfort zone, and that will help them become a successful individual in their life. So these are my views I would like to share.
Wonderful, ma'am. Thank you. Ranjit sir, if I may come to you next. So you said that during the pandemic, when learning was happening online, that really destroyed the culture. And this is the time when parents were perhaps having more time with the children than teachers, physically proximal timing, than previously. Now, as ma'am said, Neelam ma'am was talking, do you kind of want to make parents also stakeholders in rebuilding the culture, as you're saying? So you'll have to unmute yourself. So please unmute yourself.
Sir, in the development of a child or in the school education system, it's no doubt that we are having three stakeholders. One is the school, teacher, and management. Another is the student itself, and third is the parent. And if any one of the stakeholder is not fulfilling her responsibility in a responsible manner, that is going to affect the child in an adverse. All three together can only bring the child to the right platform or to the right path. Sometimes it is not that wrong parenting. Sometimes it is wrong expectation of the parents also spoil the child. We in India, you know that most of the parents have already defined what their child is going to be. So they have already, at the time of birth or after 1 year or 2 years, they have decided that my child will become IAS, engineer, or doctor. And and nobody is asking to the child what he is interested in, because if everybody is knowing, if your hobby become profession, you can do wonder in that. But who is asking about what is the hobby of the child? Who is asking what you are interested in? We are already thrusting our decision on the children. So these are also affecting adversely sometimes to the student, because the children are finding themselves suppressed. Their feelings, their opinion are being suppressed by the decision sometimes of the parent, sometimes decision of the teachers also, sometimes expectation of the school also, because there are schools, instead we are the school, we are producing so many IITs. And so every time I think the target, the number are our achievements. How many students have done medical this year? How many have cracked IITs this year? So these have been the achievement. And sometimes in this crowd of expectation, actually the child hobby, the child expectation, and the child wish to choose the path to progress is being suppressed. And that also creating the problem that we can call it a discipline problem. Sometimes it come to us as behavioral problem. But these are the things also affecting the child, which we need to understand it. For understanding that, we are doing counseling, I think, is the best way. Interacting with the parents frequently with any child or any student where school is finding that something is different, or there is change in behavior. In discipline student, generally we should discuss about this, because I was around for 12 or 13 years, I have been in DPS Bokaro, which is one of the pioneer of school in India as far as producing IIT is concerned. Every year, 70, 80 students crack IITs from that schools. And if you will find that there are many students, you will find that actually who are really suppressed, those who they don't want to do. The parents' pressure is so much because they're comparing other child performance with them. They are forcefully there in the science stream, and they can do wonder. They are having their genius, suppose, in photography, but nobody is talking about the photography is what you have to go for the science, you have to go for the IIT, you have to go for this. So these things are, these expectations level are very high in our country, and that is why I think we are more a job seeking country than the job creating country. I think these changes are required, so that instead of if you want to be job creator instead of be a job seeker, we need some changes. We need to, and for that everybody is responsible. All these three stakeholders have to come together: the parents, the child, and the school, the teachers.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And it's so true, right? In all of these 166 odd episodes, we've always found out that any plan in school works best when all three stakeholders are equally empowered. Wonderful, sir. Dr. Nair, if I may come to you next. So my last question is about the online education part. Even if schools are reopening now, we know that we'll most probably go into a blended or a hybrid kind of a model. And there'll be some amount of online learning that will persist. So how does culture work out in an online space? How do you ensure that the same culture, the fluidity that you want to maintain, remains in the online space as well?
Yeah. If our methods and approach is right, physical classes or online classes or even hybrid modes will bring in the same kind of desirable results. We need to really plan. We have gone through this phase. We had the pre-COVID, COVID period, post-COVID period. So we had a hybrid kind of system until recently, but now we have completely switched to physical mode. Everyone comes to school for their physical classes. But we have gone through, during a period of time, we were having a hybrid mode. We were having both physical and online classes, the remote teaching. And we could find carefully selecting the right platforms and also evolving the teaching strategies and methods helped us to maintain the same kind of a culture even in the online platform. And the most important key element is teacher. We need to empower teachers how to be a teacher even in the online platform. It's not just duplicating the methods of the classroom teaching in the online platform that helps. No, there should be changes, modifications, or strategies. So if a teacher is inviting, intuitive, engaging, memorable, innovative, enabling, and even disruptive, then the objectives can be met. Disruptive in the sense that teacher inspires children to rethink, reimagine, and change. So that's required. We need to engage children with active learning in social setup even in the remote platform. It's not individualized instruction that matters. Personalized instruction in a social setting. In the classroom, in the remote platform, 30 children sitting together, interacting and talking to each other, and discussing and engaging with collaborative work is what ensures the proper learning culture in that platform.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Neelam, ma'am, if I can come to you next. Same question, because first of all, Dr. Nair, thank you so much for using that word post-COVID. Every time I hear that word, a little part of me dances with joy. But Neelam, I'm coming to you. What would be our learnings in terms of managing classroom culture in the online space?
Yeah, I completely agree with Dr. Nair, what he said. Pre-COVID, during COVID and post-COVID, we do experience this blended learning. Blended learning also has, positive as well as negative aspects. This learning strategy can be applied to any program which hold on to the values of traditional learning and incorporate digital media with that. The approach is a lot more efficient, effective, and appealing to individuals than anything that has been ever before. It has not affected the importance of what is the learning culture. Student can access the resources in the absence of facilitator. It still improves the communication and interaction among us, the students, and also with the facilitators. There are a variety of communication tools such as emails, news announcements, instant messaging, online grading tool, online discussion, drop boxes, or more. And all of these communication tools offer great flexibility in terms of ensuring timely communication. May it be any concern or feedback or evaluation. All of this is now possible instantly and without any time constraint. After all, blended learning, it creates more engagement among us, the learner, increases the rate of retention in organizations, keeps learners more motivated, provides the best learning environment, and facilitates both the personal and professional development programs. Indeed, it has the values of traditional learning, and at the same time, it offers great feasibility by leveraging technological advancements to save time and money both. This learning strategy has now given a rise to many learning platforms globally and is now one of the most adopted learning tool, we can say. Blended learning, it also involves online and digital resources. Time limitations are simply the matter of the past if we do have a good internet connection. The learning strategy is way ahead than those older limitations, we can say. The online resources are always there to help 24/7. In addition, if our blended learning strategies also offer a public forum, we can also learn from the experience of others and get our solutions without the assistance of an facilitator. So I'll just conclude this, that learning at its importance is always there, whether it is a hybrid mode or a physical mode. Learning is always there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing that with us. We have also come towards the end of our time, so I will draw this to a close. Culture is something that we could possibly discuss for days at end, and the idea is never to drive a consensus, but I believe with 4 different institutions here, if we have cross-pollinated some ideas, and with members in the audience taking away from all your wonderful experiences and learnings, I think that's been a fantastic experience. Once again, thank you so much for sparing your time. And it's been an extremely enriching experience for me personally, for all of us here at Notebook, and I'm sure for the audience who has been with us. Dr. Nair, Neelam ma'am, Rashmi ma'am, and Ranjeet sir, Mr. Burrett sir, thank you all so much, because it is your experience, your learning for so many years that we kind of bank on when we create the Together for Education webinars. To the audience, thank you so much for being with us week after week. You've been the wind under our wings. We will come back to you with another session in a week's time. Until then, please take care, stay safe, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.